Laughter filled the lodge, warm and polished, the kind that came easily when money and status sat comfortably in the room. Crystal glasses clinked. Someone laughed too loud. Someone else laughed just to fit in. And then there was me, standing near the window, watching snow drift down outside like it had nowhere else to be. Before I go any further, please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. I didn't see my brother coming until his hand wrapped around my arm. He pulled me forward, a little too firmly, his grin stretched wide, practiced, shiny. The kind of smile people trust. The kind that had fooled everyone for years. "Oh, you've got to meet her," he said, loud enough to turn heads. "This is Lena. My sister. The family's, well," he chuckled, shaking his head. "Let's just say she never really amounted to much." There it was. My parents didn't stop him. My mother pressed her lips together, eyes flicking away like embarrassment was somehow my fault. My father let out a small, awkward laugh, the kind that tried to soften cruelty but somehow made it worse. I swear I heard someone whisper, "Ah," before the silence swallowed the room whole. The lodge, expensive, breathtaking, perfect, felt suddenly very small. Snow tapped gently against the massive windows, peaceful, unaware. Inside, my chest tightened. My face stayed still. I had learned that trick a long time ago. If you don't react, maybe it hurts less. Or at least, no one sees it hurt. My brother's boss stood in front of us, tall, composed, silver hair neatly combed. He didn't laugh. Not even a polite smile. His eyes moved from my brother, to my parents, and then settled on me. When my brother said my name, something changed in the man's expression. Just for a second. A pause. A narrowing of the eyes. A look like a door quietly unlocking somewhere deep in his memory. He smiled then, but it wasn't the warm kind. "Interesting," he said softly. The word hung there. He turned to my brother. "Ethan, I'll see you in my office tomorrow morning." That was it. No explanation. No laughter. No approval. My brother's grin faltered. Just a crack. Just enough for me to see panic flicker behind his eyes. I stood frozen, heat rushing to my face, humiliation burning like it always did when I was reminded of my place in the family story. The failure. The extra. The one who never quite fit. A few minutes later, I muttered something about a headache. No one stopped me. No one followed. Outside, the cold air hit my lungs hard. I sat in my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, and laughed once under my breath. A short, broken sound. Because if I didn't laugh, I might cry. And I was so tired of crying alone. If you've ever been made to feel small by the very people who should have protected you, stay with me. This isn't just a story. It's a reckoning. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table in my little house on the edge of the city, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his smile. Heard his voice. Felt the room go quiet. I'd worn that label, family disappointment, for as long as I could remember. At 41, I ran my own financial consulting firm. Quiet work. Fixing broken companies before they collapsed. No applause. No fancy titles. Just results. I was good at it. Really good. But none of that mattered to them. Success, in my family, had to be loud. Flashy. Visible. And my brother had always been all of those things. 3 months before that night, he'd called me out of nowhere. "Hey, I need a favor," he'd said casually, like he was asking to borrow a charger. "You're good with contracts and boring stuff, right? Can you look over a few things for the engagement party?" I should have said no. But I didn't. Because even after everything, some stupid part of me still hoped. Still wanted approval. Still believed that helping might finally make them see me. I didn't know then that I was holding the entire event together with sleepless nights, quiet fixes, and money I never should have spent. I didn't know that without me, that perfect party would have fallen apart piece by piece. And I definitely didn't know that the man who watched me stand there in silence that night already knew exactly who I was. What he remembered, and why it would change everything, comes next. Stay with me. The house was too quiet that morning. No music. No phone buzzing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breathing, uneven, like I'd been running all night instead of sitting still. I stared at that cold coffee and shook my head, letting out a soft laugh that went nowhere. Imagine being called a failure by someone whose life you've been quietly holding together. Because that was the truth no one at that lodge knew. I'd built my career in the shadows. I didn't rescue companies that made headlines. I stepped in when things were already bleeding, when owners were desperate enough to listen. I fixed contracts. Untangled bad deals. Stopped lawsuits before they were even filed. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. And it mattered. To my family, though, none of that counted. My brother, Ethan, 5 years younger, effortlessly charming, was the golden one. Big job. Big smile. Big announcements. Every promotion was a celebration. Every photo framed. Every mistake quietly overlooked. Me? I got polite nods. Maybe that's nice, before someone asked when I'd finally settled down. 3 months before the engagement party, he'd called me late one night. "Lena, I'm drowning," he said lightly, like stress was some kind of joke. "Work's insane. The engagement party planning is a mess. You're good at this stuff. Can you help?" I should have heard the warning bells. But I didn't. It started small. Reviewing vendor quotes. Reading contracts. And then I saw it, the kind of mistake that makes your stomach drop. A clause buried deep in the event coordinator's contract that could have cost him tens of thousands if anything went wrong. One missed delivery. One delay. And he'd be on the hook. Careless. Dangerous. I spent 3 nights renegotiating it. Calm voice. Firm tone. Removing penalties. Securing better terms. He never asked what I changed. Just sent a thumbs-up emoji and moved on. Then the reminders came. The photographer. The band. Both unpaid. Both preparing to cancel. If they walked, the whole event would collapse. No music. No photos. No refunds from the lodge. His perfect moment, gone. I wired the money myself. My hands actually trembled when I hit send. $14,000. Money from a client retainer I wasn't supposed to touch yet. I told myself I'd sort it out later. "You're a lifesaver," he texted. "I'll pay you back right away." He never did. I kept fixing things. Late nights. Early mornings. Catching inflated florist charges. Negotiating catering costs down. Quietly cleaning up mess after mess while he slept peacefully, convinced everything was magically working out. And it did. On the night of the party, people praised him. Complimented his organization. His professionalism. His attention to detail. I stood there listening, smiling politely, knowing how close it all came to disaster. Knowing that without me, none of it would exist. And then he called me the family failure. Something in me cracked that night. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a small, sharp break inside, like ice splitting under too much weight. If you've ever given everything to people who took credit and left you empty, you're not imagining it. Keep listening. Because that morning, alone in my kitchen, I finally asked myself a question I'd avoided for years. Why was I still protecting someone who had never once protected me? And why did the man who watched it all unfold at that lodge look at me like he already knew the answer? The reason Ethan's boss recognized me will surface next, and it's tied to a secret from my past I never expected to resurface. Tuesday came quietly. No drama. No warning. Just another ordinary morning, or so I thought. I was at my desk when the shadow crossed the frosted glass. A sleek black SUV idled outside my small office, completely out of place between the aging sedans and delivery vans. I frowned, stood, and stepped into the reception area. He was already there. Ethan's boss. Impeccably dressed. Calm. Holding a leather portfolio like it carried something fragile. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled, not the polite kind people wear at parties, but the kind that came with memory. "Lena," he said, extending his hand. "Do you have time for a conversation?" I nodded, heart thudding, and led him to the small conference table. The chairs scraped softly as we sat. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "That night at the lodge," he said evenly, "when your brother introduced you, something felt familiar. The way you stood there. Calm. Still. Like you'd learned long ago that defending yourself wouldn't change anything." I swallowed. On the drive home, he continued, it came back to me. He opened the portfolio and slid out a faded report. Yellowed edges. Old formatting. Clean. Precise. Efficient. My name stared back at me. 15 years ago. I felt my breath hitch, just slightly. "I was drowning," he said quietly. Loans. Bad contracts. Warehouses bleeding money. Bankruptcy was weeks away. My father had just passed. I didn't know how to save what he'd built. I remembered those nights. Endless spreadsheets. Cold calls. Coffee gone bitter. Hope hanging by a thread. "You came in without asking for payment," he said. "You worked like it was your own company. You fixed everything no one else even saw. And when I tried to pay you, you refused." I laughed softly, shaking my head. Ah. I'd been young. Idealistic. Stubborn. "You said people in real crisis shouldn't be charged for being honest," he added. I never forgot that. Silence settled between us, thick and heavy. "That company," he said, meeting my eyes, "became the foundation of everything I have now. Including the position your brother works under." Something twisted in my chest. Not pride. Not anger. Just recognition. For the first time in years, someone saw me clearly. Have you ever helped someone change their entire life, only to be erased from the story? If that hit close, stay with me. He closed the portfolio gently. "When I heard how your family described you," he said, voice firm now, "it didn't match reality. And I've been watching certain patterns at work. Closely. I knew then. This wasn't just a visit to say thank you. This was the beginning of consequences." What he uncovered about my brother's success wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. And next, he asked me to do something that would change everything. We didn't talk about my brother right away. Instead, he asked about my work. My current clients. The problems I solved without noise or applause. He listened closely, nodding, asking questions that showed he understood every word. It felt strange, comforting, even. Like speaking a language someone else finally knew. Then he leaned back slightly and folded his hands. "There's a reason I came to you," he said. The air shifted. "For nearly a year, I've had my internal team quietly auditing several departments," he continued. "Small discrepancies at first. Expense reports. Credit assignments. Nothing dramatic on the surface." I felt my stomach tighten. "Your brother showed up early in the review," he said calmly. He slid documents across the table. Emails. Expense logs. Timelines. What unfolded felt unreal and painfully familiar at the same time. Projects publicly praised as my brother's brilliance had been built by others. Junior analysts. Long nights. Quiet work. He stepped in near the end, redirected communications through himself, reworded updates, and walked away with credit and bonuses. Then came the expenses. Luxury trips labeled as client meetings. Designer suits filed under professional necessities. Even engagement-related costs quietly charged to the company. Over $100,000. I sat there, hands clasped, breathing slow. Not shocked. Just exhausted. Like hearing confirmation of something your bones already knew. I'm not asking you to be involved in any disciplinary decisions, he said quickly. That process stands on its own. But we've acquired 2 subsidiaries, and I need someone independent. Someone who doesn't play politics. Someone I trust. He placed a contract in front of me. 6 months. A compensation figure that made my head spin. Authority to restructure operations across departments. For the first time, opportunity came to me not because I begged for recognition, but because my work had quietly earned it. I hesitated only long enough to set one boundary. I won't interfere where my brother is concerned, I said evenly. He nodded. You won't have to. I signed days later. And that's when my phone rang. My brother's name lit up the screen. We met at a small coffee shop downtown. Neutral ground. He looked nothing like the confident man from the party. Dark circles under his eyes. Shirt wrinkled. Hands shaking as he wrapped them around an untouched cup. They're closing in, he whispered. Expense reports. Project credit. They want confirmation. If you tell them we consulted together, that I ran things by you. I stared at him, feeling something hollow where hope used to live. I'm not lying, I said quietly. His face hardened. You owe me, he snapped. Family backs family. I stood. Family doesn't humiliate you in public, I replied. Family doesn't steal and expect silence. The calls came after that. Late-night voicemails. Accusations. Guilt. Anger. And then, something darker. Forged emails. Messages made to look like mine, advising him on exactly how to hide misconduct. He tried to pull me down with him. I documented everything. Calmly. Precisely. The same way I always worked. When someone tries to drag you into their mess to save themselves, remember this, truth doesn't need panic to survive. The hearing was swift. I watched from behind one-way glass as evidence stacked up. Explanations crumbled. Emotion didn't save him. Termination. Legal recovery. Authorities notified. He walked out carrying a cardboard box. I didn't feel triumph. Just relief. Like finally putting something heavy down after carrying it for decades. But the reckoning wasn't finished yet. Because the next confrontation wouldn't happen at work, it would happen at a family table, where the truth had been buried for years. 2 months passed. Life didn't explode. It didn't collapse either. It just settled. Like dust after a storm you didn't realize you'd been standing in your whole life. Then the invitation arrived. Handwritten. Careful. From my aunt, the quiet one. The observer. The one who never took sides out loud but always seemed to know more than she said. It's time we talked openly. Please come. I almost didn't go. But something told me this wasn't about obligation. It was about truth finally running out of places to hide. The house was warm when I arrived. Candles lit. Food already on the table. Everyone was there, my parents sitting stiffly at one end, my brother beside an empty chair. He didn't look up when I walked in. No smirk this time. Just a tight jaw and tired eyes. Dinner began politely. Too politely. Forks clinked. Small talk stumbled along. Then my aunt stood. Her voice didn't shake. I've stayed silent long enough, she said. And tonight, that ends. My father opened his mouth. She raised a hand. He closed it. She turned to the table. You've called her a failure for years, she said, nodding toward me. So let me tell you who she actually is. The room went very quiet. When I was diagnosed, she continued, treatment costs exceeded everything I had. I was ready to lose my home. She paid the bills. Quietly. Without telling anyone. My mother's fork froze midair. When Mark lost his job, she said, turning to my cousin, who loaned him the money to start over. No interest. No pressure. No one spoke. And the education fund, she said then, her voice tightening. The money set aside for her. You took it. Gave it to him. My father's face drained of color. She'll manage, my mother whispered weakly. She always does. That's when something inside me finally gave way, not in pain, but in release. A soft, breathless laugh slipped out. Of course I managed. I always had to. No one argued after that. Dinner ended quietly. Chairs scraped. Goodbyes were awkward. No one asked me to stay. Outside, my aunt hugged me tightly. I needed them to hear it, she whispered. And you deserved it, said out loud. I drove home with tears blurring the road, not from sadness, but from something lighter. Like grief finally leaving my body. A year later, my life looked different. I changed my number. Filtered emails. Let silence do the work words never could. My firm grew. I hired help. Took on cases that mattered to me. I stopped fixing people who broke me and started building something that didn't require permission. News trickled in from a distance. My brother lost everything he'd built on shortcuts. My parents grew quieter. Regret doesn't age gracefully. I didn't celebrate. I breathed. Sometimes, late at night, I think about how long I tried to earn love by shrinking myself. Ah, what a waste of strength. Walking away wasn't cruelty. It was survival. And peace came not from being seen by those who refused, but from finally seeing myself clearly. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life.